For these 6 athletes, competition wasn't just a career, it was their passion and their connection to thousands of fans. But in those final moments, with crowds watching and cameras rolling, their hearts simply stopped beating. These are the stories of athletes who died in front of the fans who believed in them. It was April 15, 2017, and the streets of Boston buzzed with the electric energy of Marathon Monday as over 500,000 spectators lined the 26.2-mile course to witness one of the world's most prestigious running events. The spring air carried the scent of blooming flowers and the sounds of cowbells and cheering crowds, while runners from around the globe prepared to tackle the challenging course that had tested endurance athletes for over a century. The finish line on Boylston Street represented the culmination of months of training and the realization of lifelong dreams. Carlos Mendoza adjusted his racing bib as he warmed up near the starting line in Hopkinton, his lean frame reflecting years of dedicated training that had transformed him from a weekend warrior into a competitive club runner. At 34, the high school math teacher had built his local reputation through consistent performances at regional marathons, including a recent Boston qualifying time that had earned him entry into the prestigious race. His weathered running shoes and calloused feet told the story of countless early morning miles logged before heading to work. The Boston Marathon represented the pinnacle of Carlos's amateur running career, with his family and students lining the streets specifically to watch their beloved teacher tackle the legendary course. He'd been experiencing chest pains during recent training sessions, but had dismissed them as stress from balancing his demanding teaching job with intensive marathon preparation. His family doctor had suggested a cardiac evaluation after Carlos mentioned the discomfort, but the runner had postponed the appointment until after Boston. Carlos's training had been impressive for an amateur athlete, with his running club coach noting exceptional fitness levels and race-ready conditioning. The chest pains had been intermittent and seemed to disappear during easy runs, leading Carlos to believe they were related to work stress rather than any serious medical condition. His wife had expressed concerns about his health, but Carlos's determination to achieve his Boston Marathon dream made him dismiss their worries. As the race began, Carlos settled into his target pace with the confidence of someone who'd run this distance dozens of times before. The early miles felt effortless as he moved through the field, his breathing steady and his form smooth. His students cheered his name as he passed, many holding signs supporting their favorite teacher. The famous Newton Hills posed a significant challenge for Carlos, but his months of hill training paid off as he maintained his pace. At mile 24, with just over 2 miles remaining, Carlos was running well within his goal time when disaster struck without warning. He suddenly clutched his chest and stumbled forward, his smooth running form deteriorating into an unsteady shuffle. Spectators initially thought he was experiencing typical late race fatigue and cheered louder to encourage him, their voices creating a wall of sound that echoed off the buildings lining Boylston Street. Carlos collapsed on the asphalt in full view of thousands of cheering fans and live television cameras broadcasting to millions worldwide. His body convulsed as he went into cardiac arrest, the medical emergency unfolding in real time before a horrified audience. Medical personnel rushed to his aid, performing CPR as spectators watched the desperate attempt to save his life. The cheering crowd fell silent as the reality of the situation became clear. This wasn't exhaustion or dehydration, but a life-threatening medical emergency. Despite immediate medical attention from experienced marathon medical staff, Carlos's heart had stopped beating and could not be restarted. He was pronounced dead on Boylston Street, just 2.2 miles from achieving his dream of finishing Boston. The race continued as emergency crews worked frantically to save Carlos's life, while his family and students who had been celebrating moments before stood in stunned silence. Autopsy results revealed that Carlos had suffered from an undiagnosed genetic heart condition that caused sudden cardiac death. The local running community mourned the loss of a beloved teacher and dedicated runner. It was November 12, 2014, and the electric atmosphere of Madison Square Garden crackled with playoff intensity as 18,000 hockey fans packed the legendary arena for a crucial game. The ice surface gleamed under the bright lights while the crowd's energy created a deafening roar that reverberated through the building's steel and concrete structure. Players from both teams fed off the crowd's enthusiasm, knowing that playoff hockey at MSG represented the sport at its absolute pinnacle. Tommy Sullivan laced up his skates in the locker room, his muscular frame reflecting years of professional hockey training, and the physical demands of playing at the NHL's highest level. At 28, the defenseman had established himself as a reliable player known for his work ethic and team-first attitude. Though he'd been feeling unusually fatigued during recent games, his teammates had noticed him breathing heavily during shifts, but Tommy attributed the symptoms to the intense playoff schedule and increased ice time. The playoff atmosphere at Madison Square Garden represented everything Tommy loved about professional hockey: passionate fans, high stakes, and the opportunity to compete for the ultimate prize. His team was trailing by 1 goal in the third period, and Tommy was determined to help secure a victory that would keep their championship hopes alive. The crowd was electric, with fans on their feet cheering for what could be a season-defining moment. Tommy had been playing exceptionally well throughout the playoffs, logging heavy minutes and contributing both offensively and defensively. The fatigue he'd been experiencing seemed manageable during games, though his wife had expressed concerns about his health after noticing him struggling to catch his breath at home. Tommy had dismissed her worries, insisting that playoff hockey was supposed to be exhausting and that he'd rest after the season ended. Just minutes before the tragedy, Tommy had scored the tying goal that brought the crowd to its feet in thunderous celebration. His teammates mobbed him at the boards while 18,000 fans screamed their approval, the goal representing the kind of clutch performance that defined playoff hockey. Tommy skated back to the bench with renewed energy, feeding off the crowd's enthusiasm and his team's momentum. During a routine line change, Tommy suddenly collapsed on the ice near the team bench in full view of the entire arena. Players from both teams immediately stopped play and called for medical assistance as fans watched in confusion, initially thinking he'd been injured during the previous shift. The crowd's cheers turned to concerned murmurs as it became clear that something was seriously wrong. Arena medical staff rushed onto the ice while Tommy went into cardiac arrest on the frozen surface, his body convulsing as his heart stopped beating. The crowd fell silent as they realized this wasn't a typical hockey injury, but a life-threatening emergency unfolding before their eyes. Despite immediate CPR and defibrillation attempts by experienced medical personnel, Tommy could not be revived. The game was immediately canceled as players from both teams wept openly on the ice, their playoff battle forgotten in the face of tragedy. Fans remained in the arena for hours, many crying and comforting each other, as the shocking news spread throughout the hockey world. Investigation revealed that Tommy had suffered from an undiagnosed genetic heart condition that caused sudden cardiac death. Madison Square Garden retired Tommy's jersey number and established a memorial fund for cardiac research, while the NHL implemented comprehensive cardiac screening for all players. The hockey community mourned the loss of a player who embodied the sport's values of dedication and teamwork. It was May 17, 2015, and the modest stadium of Brackleytown FC buzzed with excitement as 3,200 fans packed the ground for their FA Cup third qualifying round match. The non-league club had never progressed this far in the competition, and the atmosphere crackled with the kind of raw passion that defined grassroots English football. Local supporters who had followed the team through years of obscurity now dared to dream of a potential giant-killing run that could put their small town on the football map. Marcus Johnson stretched on the well-worn pitch as he prepared for what could be the biggest match in the club's history, his athletic frame reflecting years of training in the lower tiers of English football. At 26, the midfielder had worked his way through various non-league clubs, earning his place at Brackley through determination and skill that had impressed coaches despite never quite breaking into the professional ranks. His family had traveled from across the county to watch him play in this crucial cup tie that could earn the club a lucrative draw against a football league opponent. The FA Cup third qualifying round represented a pivotal moment for Marcus and his teammates, a chance to progress toward the competition proper, where dreams of facing Premier League giants could become reality. He'd been experiencing occasional dizziness during recent training sessions, but had never mentioned the symptoms to the club's part-time medical staff, fearing it might jeopardize his place in the starting lineup. The opportunity to help his club make history was too important to risk with medical concerns that seemed minor. Marcus's preparation for the match had been excellent, with his manager praising his fitness levels and tactical understanding. The dizziness episodes had been brief and infrequent, occurring mainly during intense training sessions when his heart rate was elevated. Marcus had convinced himself that the symptoms were related to excitement and adrenaline rather than any serious medical condition, especially given the limited medical resources available at non-league level. The match had been exceptional for Marcus, who had already scored 1 goal and assisted another, putting in a performance that justified his reputation as one of the best players in the division. The crowd had chanted his name after his goal, creating a moment he'd dreamed about since childhood. His family watched proudly from the small stand as their son lived out his football dreams on the pitch where he'd become a local hero. In the 73rd minute, with his team leading and the crowd in full voice, Marcus suddenly stopped running and stood motionless in the center of the pitch. Players and fans initially thought he was catching his breath or dealing with a minor injury, but his stillness seemed unnatural. Then he collapsed face first onto the grass as 3,200 spectators watched in stunned silence. Players from both teams immediately signaled for medical help as Marcus began convulsing on the field, his body shaking uncontrollably as he went into cardiac arrest. The club's limited medical staff rushed onto the pitch while the crowd watched the emergency unfold, their cheers replaced by an eerie silence that filled the small stadium. Despite immediate medical intervention, the non-league club's basic medical equipment proved insufficient for Marcus's condition. He suffered fatal cardiac arrest on the field where he'd been playing the match of his life. The crowd remained silent as medical staff worked desperately to save him, but his heart could not be restarted. He was pronounced dead on the pitch where he'd become a local legend. The match was abandoned as players from both teams were too distraught to continue, while fans remained in the stadium singing Marcus's name and holding scarves aloft in tribute. The tragedy highlighted the disparity in medical resources between professional and non-league football, leading to improved cardiac screening protocols and emergency medical equipment requirements across all levels of English football. It was March 8, 2016, and the modest arena at Cal State Northridge buzzed with playoff electricity as 4,500 basketball fans packed the venue for the Big West Conference Tournament semifinal. The hardwood court gleamed under the bright lights, while the crowd's energy created an atmosphere that players described as intoxicating. Local supporters and college students filled the stands, creating a wall of sound that pushed players to perform at their highest level in this crucial postseason matchup. Deshaun Williams taped his ankles in the locker room, his 6'8" frame reflecting years of college basketball training and the physical demands of playing a full season while maintaining his academic responsibilities. At 22, the senior forward had established himself as the team's leader and was known for his work ethic and clutch performances. Though he'd been experiencing shortness of breath during recent games, he'd attributed the symptoms to the stress of balancing final exams with the intense conference tournament schedule. The conference tournament semifinal made it one of the most important games of Deshaun's college career, with his team needing a victory to advance to the championship game and potentially earn an automatic bid to March Madness. His family had driven down from Oakland, including his younger siblings who rarely got to see their brother play due to the distance and their parents' work schedules. The crowd was electric, sensing the importance of the moment and feeding off the players' intensity. Deshaun had been playing exceptionally well throughout his senior season, averaging career-high numbers and earning all-conference honors. The shortness of breath had been concerning, but the college's limited medical staff had attributed it to the increased minutes he'd been playing as the team's go-to player. Deshaun had undergone basic fitness testing that showed no obvious problems, leading everyone to believe his conditioning would improve with rest after the season. Just minutes before the tragedy, Deshaun had made a spectacular dunk that brought the crowd to their feet in thunderous applause. His family jumped up and down in the stands while his girlfriend beamed with pride from the student section, the moment representing the culmination of 4 years of college basketball. Deshaun jogged back on defense with a smile, feeding off the crowd's energy and his team's momentum. While running back on defense, Deshaun suddenly grabbed his chest and fell to the court near center court, his 220-pound frame hitting the hardwood with a sickening thud. The crowd initially thought he had been fouled hard or suffered a collision, but quickly realized something was seriously wrong when he didn't get up. Players from both teams gathered around as Deshaun went into cardiac arrest on the basketball court. The college's limited medical staff performed CPR, while 4,500 fans watched in horrified silence from their seats. The arena's usual noise replaced by an eerie quiet broken only by the sounds of emergency equipment. Despite immediate medical attention and rapid transport to a nearby hospital, Deshaun's heart could not be restarted. He was pronounced dead, leaving behind his family and teammates who had watched their leader collapse. The game was suspended as players were too emotional to continue, with many crying openly on the court where their teammate had just died. Fans remained in their seats for over an hour, many praying and comforting each other as the tragic news spread throughout the college basketball community. The NCAA implemented enhanced cardiac screening protocols for all student athletes following this incident. It was September 3, 2017, and Court 17 at the U.S. Open buzzed with the energy of 2,500 tennis fans who had gathered for a second-round qualifying match that would determine entry into the main draw. The smaller venue, one of the outer courts at Flushing Meadows, provided an intimate atmosphere where aspiring players fought for their chance to compete on tennis's biggest stage. The late afternoon sun cast dramatic shadows across the court, while spectators hoped to witness the next breakthrough story in professional tennis. Isabella Rodriguez bounced the tennis ball as she prepared to serve, her athletic frame reflecting years of training that had brought her to the brink of her first Grand Slam main draw appearance. At 24, the Spanish player had been grinding through the lower-tier professional circuit, working her way up through determination and skill, while struggling to break into the sport's elite level. Her parents had scraped together money to fly in from Madrid to watch their daughter attempt to qualify for her first U.S. Open main draw. The U.S. Open qualifying match represented a crucial moment Isabella had been working toward her entire career, a chance to earn entry into the main draw after years of struggle on the professional tour. She'd been experiencing occasional chest pains during recent tournaments, but had attributed them to the stress of competing for such important ranking points. The opportunity to qualify for her first Grand Slam was too important to jeopardize with medical concerns that seemed manageable. Isabella's preparation for the match had been solid, with her coach noting good fitness levels despite their limited resources. The chest pains had been infrequent and seemed to occur mainly during high-stress moments, leading Isabella to believe they were anxiety-related rather than indicative of any serious medical condition. Her family had expressed some concerns, but Isabella's determination to finally break through made her dismiss their worries. The match had been going well for Isabella, who was leading and appeared to be heading toward her first U.S. Open main draw qualification. The small crowd had embraced her underdog story, cheering loudly for the player who had overcome years of setbacks to reach this moment. Her parents watched proudly from the modest stands as their daughter played some of the best tennis of her career. During a changeover in the third set, Isabella suddenly collapsed in her chair and began having difficulty breathing, her face turning pale as she struggled for air. Medical personnel rushed onto the court as the crowd watched in confusion and growing concern, initially thinking she was dealing with heat exhaustion or dehydration. But her condition deteriorated rapidly as she went into cardiac arrest while sitting in her chair. Despite immediate CPR and defibrillation attempts by experienced medical staff, Isabella could not be revived as 2,500 spectators looked on in horror. The match was abandoned as her opponent and officials were too distraught to continue, while her parents were comforted by tournament officials as the tennis world processed the tragic loss. The qualifying tournament was suspended for the remainder of the day as players and fans struggled to comprehend what had happened, while the U.S. Open held moments of silence before matches on the main courts. The tennis community established a foundation in Isabella's name to support cardiac research, and enhanced cardiac screening requirements were implemented for all professional players worldwide. It was August 12, 2016, and the Omaha Aquatic Center buzzed with the energy of the U.S. Olympic swimming trials as thousands of spectators gathered to witness the final selection process for the Rio Olympics. The state-of-the-art facility provided the perfect venue for America's best swimmers to compete for the coveted spots on the Olympic team. The pool deck buzzed with nervous energy as athletes prepared for races that would either fulfill their Olympic dreams or end them in heartbreak. Nathan Cooper adjusted his goggles as he prepared for the 1,500-meter freestyle final, the longest and most grueling race that would test his endurance and mental fortitude over nearly 15 minutes of competition. At 22, the distance swimmer had dedicated his life to reaching this moment, training twice daily for years to earn his shot at making the Olympic team. His lean frame and powerful shoulders reflected countless hours in the pool, while his calm demeanor masked the pressure of competing for his Olympic dream. The 1,500-meter freestyle final represented Nathan's best chance to make the Olympic team, with only the top two finishers earning spots for Rio. He'd been experiencing fatigue during recent training sessions, but had attributed it to the intense preparation schedule and the pressure of Olympic trials. His coach had noticed him struggling during some practice sets, but assumed it was normal pre-competition nerves. Nathan's family and hometown supporters had traveled to Omaha specifically to watch him compete for his Olympic dream, their presence adding emotional weight to an already significant moment. The young swimmer had been dreaming of this opportunity since childhood, when he'd watched previous Olympics and imagined himself racing for Team USA. The race began with Nathan settling into his characteristic steady pace, the strategy that had carried him to this point through years of national-level competition. He moved through the early laps with fluid strokes, his technique polished through years of refinement under expert coaching. The crowd cheered as he maintained position with the other contenders, swimming for one of the 2 precious Olympic spots available. As Nathan approached the final 200 meters, he was swimming well and remained in contention for a top 2 finish that would send him to Rio. The crowd's energy built as the race entered its climactic phase, with spectators on their feet cheering for the swimmers who had pushed their bodies to the absolute limit. Nathan's family screamed encouragement from the stands as their son chased his Olympic dream. With 150 meters remaining in the race, Nathan suddenly stopped swimming and began floating motionless in the pool, his body going limp as he lost consciousness in the water. Pool safety divers immediately jumped in to assist as spectators watched in confusion from the stands, initially thinking he was experiencing cramping or exhaustion. But his condition was far more serious as he went into cardiac arrest while being pulled from the pool. Medical personnel performed CPR poolside as the other swimmers were stopped and removed from the water, the trials competition grinding to a halt as emergency crews fought to save Nathan's life. Despite immediate medical intervention by experienced medical staff, Nathan was pronounced dead at the local hospital, his Olympic dreams ending in the pool, where he'd hoped to earn his spot on Team USA. The swimming competition was suspended for the remainder of the day, as athletes and officials mourned Nathan's death, while USA Swimming held moments of silence before every subsequent event. Nathan's lane was left empty during ceremonies, with flowers placed where he would have stood if he'd achieved his Olympic dream. USA Swimming implemented enhanced cardiac screening protocols for all national-level competitors. Thanks for watching. Just when you think physical fitness and youth provide protection from tragedy, click the next video for more stories that will leave you questioning the fragility of life, even among those who seem invincible.